Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The world of sanctions has clearly changed, and profoundly so. When it comes to foreign assets, some key Western countries are not just freezing, but seizing foreign assets and repurposing them. They include the United States, France, Italy, and Switzerland, but the pattern of doing this is with executive authority. Switzerland is a notable exception, which requires involvement of the Federal Administrative Court in that process. There can be no doubt that FARA is highly relevant to the situation we face today in Ukraine. But moral outrage, though entirely justified in this case, is not necessarily the basis of sound public policy. So let me put a number of propositions on the table to explain why I think FARA is good public policy. Proposition 1. FARA is based on the concept that it is well within the proper role of government, our government, to conduct our country's foreign policy. That same authority was used to enact Magnitsky, and FARA is the logical extension of that authority. FARA is not building a completely new bridge. That bridge was built when Magnitsky was passed, when SEMA was passed, and earlier the FACFOA Act was also passed. Freezing assets under Magnitsky was meant to be a means to an end. FARA now provides that destination. If passed, we can think of FARA as the toll booth at the end of the Magnitsky Bridge, because those who have crossed it are already deemed under Magnitsky to be responsible or complicit in gross human rights violations and also acts of corruption. Proposition 2, FARA introduces political accountability and legal due process in the disposition of assets for those complicit in gross human rights violations or corruption. It is also important to note that the experience of the courts is well established to deal with the repurposing of assets. As Senator Dalphond has noted on substance bill S-217, there's nothing to fear. The concepts are already well established in our domestic law relating to the proceeds of crime and the seized property under the Seized Property Management Act. Proposition 3, Canada has the sovereign right to enact such legislation. When an individual chooses to invest or acquire assets in Canada, it is axiomatic in international law that those assets are subject to local laws and jurisdiction. Proposition 4, FARA will reduce the cost to taxpayers and other holders of foreign assets, because when an entity is frozen or sequestered, there's still costs associated with managing it. FARA, Proposition 5, FARA levels the playing field when our country is forced to deal with bad actors and corrupt regimes. Our government needs the ability to fire back at those who are not constrained by the rule of law, as we now see in Russia. Unlike the Emergency Powers Act, which does give the government extensive confiscatory powers in an international emergency, including situations short of war, FARA is a scalpel and not a chainsaw. Proposition 6, FARA will have significant deterrent effects against bad actors who want to park their money and ill-gotten gains in Canada. If the government has confiscatory powers, as it would under FARA, those individuals may think twice about hiding their wealth here, which is a good thing given our country's reputation for snow washing. Proposition 7, some believe that frozen assets should only be returned to the government of the asset holder's country of origin. That might come, for example, when there is regime change. FARA in no way constrains the ability of our government and officials to do that, but it does give our government the additional option to apply to repurpose those assets to help the victims of a state's action when there is no regime change. Repurposing those assets to help the victims of the heinous crimes we're seeing now in Ukraine carried out by Russia is the kind of down payment on future reparations we could enact now. Finally, I would like to suggest that FARA be officially named the Volodymyr Zelensky Act to honor and celebrate the courageous leader of Ukraine. And if we pass this act, hopefully other countries will follow our lead.